Hello there, everyone. And once again, welcome to One Idea Away. You know, one of the just pure joys that I have on this show is that I get to interview many different types of guests, and they come from different walks of life. They have different backgrounds, different journeys, different expertise. And among those things that we get into, it's usually the personal story. It's the personal journey that our guests have been through that is the most intriguing as well as the most inspiring to me. And it's that even when we bring on an expert to talk about whatever it is that maybe they've studied for years and years and years, the thing that always is most intriguing is the personal journey they've been on, because it gives an intimacy to the experience and the wisdom and the insights that they can bring. Well, today we've got an extraordinary story to be able to share with you. This is an individual that I got to get to know just as my role of being president of the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. This is one of our graduates. And he went through a pretty dramatic transformation. And to me, whenever we share certain stories of transformation, and I even think about it as kind of liberating, meaning that transformation sometimes is about changing and thinking that we're becoming something we're not. To me, liberation is becoming more of who we actually are in the first place. So this is as much a story of liberation as it is transformation. And when I share those types of stories, very often there are some usually dramatic and sometimes traumatic events that have occurred that have created that type of a shift. While these guests and these individuals have been through and overcome so much, we get caught up at times in maybe the physical challenge or the circumstantial challenges they've been through. And yet it's the social, the emotional, the spiritual transformation that takes place that to me just puts me in complete awe of what they've accomplished and who they are today and how much of that embodies who they really truly are. And we've got one of those wonderful stories to share with you today. And so I get to introduce you to Tony Degliomini. And the thing is that when Tony reached out to me and he got to share some of the story that he's been through and some of the journey that he's been through, I was really taken back by exactly that social, emotional, and spiritual change that he had been through. And we're going to dive into those parts of his story today. But let me officially say that Tony is the author of the book Believe, in which he shares about this journey through his rehab after a major cycling accident, which left him temporarily paralyzed. This event led him to share his story in order to assist others to get through those difficult times in our lives. We each possess a unique ability to fight back through these challenges. However, the journey is not always easy, and it most certainly is not always on our terms either. Tony's a graduate of Rutgers University. He's also a certified life coach through the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. He's worked in corporate management for over 30 years, and he sits on the committee for the McGee Hospital's Night of Champions, which benefits the community and patient programs such as art therapy, facility dog program, pastoral care, as well as wheelchair sports teams. And with that, Tony, thank you so much for joining us here on One Idea Away.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Tony, I think maybe the place to begin, because I really was taken aback by the story that you shared with me, but maybe the place to begin is actually at the end of this, meaning I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of who you are today, what life looks like for you today, and some of the things maybe that you're up to. And then we'll peel back and talk about this journey that has led you to where you are.
Sure. Well, it's been an amazing journey. And really, I think that I am who I've always been, but just with an increased awareness of who I am today. And what I mean by that is so much of what we do and how we feel in life is a product of all our experiences in our lives and things we go through. But to me, I've had an awakening per se. And my life now is really that little boy and that guy who grew up all those years. I'm truly living who I am today, who I was back then, and who I've always been. So it's been an awakening, an awareness of who I truly am. And I'm living out all those passion and dreams and things that I've always wanted to do in my life, and be that loving guy and being that guy giving back every day. So I feel like now I am truly being who I was always meant to be. And it's very liberating. It's feeling a great deal of freedom that I've never experienced in my life. And it's very odd. It came through a tragedy. I can't explain it some days. It's a blessing. I know it's the cliche of the blessings in disguise, but truly, truly an awakening, I would say. That's the most.
You know, it's interesting because I hear I hear a lot of people describe this where, I'm more today, who I really am than I probably have been since my childhood. And to couple that with that idea of feeling free to be that person, I think is another thing that I hear very often. And it makes me, it kind of brings me back. And it's so much of what I've spent at this point, probably a lifetime trying to understand are the things that pull us away from that very nature of who we are. And I guess maybe if let's do that, maybe let's take a look backwards for the moment so that we can understand kind of who you were and then what you went through. But just before you share the personal side, I'm just kind of curious from your vantage point of what do you believe maybe you got caught up in? What do you believe that maybe were the experiences of life that pulled you away from more of this kind of natural state of who you really truly are?
All right, how long do we have? No, I'm just kidding. Right. It's a buildup. It's a buildup of, you come out of college, right? And you have this, I guess this pie in the sky look of, what life should be and how you should live, and the big home and the cars and the family and the children and the career that, skyrocketing, and making X amount of dollars and, all this stuff that goes on over the years that you build up. And, you get caught up in that. I believe you get caught up in it. And I think that I call it the ladder. And I see a lot of people climbing the ladder up, right? The ladder, and they're knocking people off. They're falling off the rings, and they're grabbing tight, and they're pushing people off the ladder. I think it's all that accumulation of all those preconceptions of, from the time that your aunt's telling you should be you're a doctor, and your dad's saying, you should be that lawyer, and you need that, you need X amount of dollars to survive today, and all these notions and these projections and perceptions, or you're getting blasted with, and eventually you start to believe in it. You start to believe in all this stuff, right? All this things that people are saying, and you get caught up. And I think, I believe, and I know for a fact that I got caught up in a lot of those things. And they're not right or wrong. It's just part of life. It's part of growing up. It's part of maturing. And I believe, to a sense, we all feel it at some points in our life. You stop for a moment. Sometimes you say, is that really what I want? No. I'm going to keep on going. So I just feel it's some of those things that you're constantly hearing as you're growing up and you're raising families and trying to just get ahead in life. Whatever.
You describe it very well. And I think, the idea of even getting lost in it, it's that frame that I've used every once in a while is that we get caught up in this idea of trying to find ourselves, find our purpose, find all of these things that we're looking for in life. And when we use that word find, which is the most common one that's probably used in that context, it orients us to continue to look outside of ourselves.
Correct.
Natural, right? So naturally, if we look outside ourselves, we're going to look at what are the things that we can find that we think are going to define us in some way so that we think we know ourselves. And it's the job, it's the relationship, it's the money, it's the material items, it's the accomplishments, all of these types of things. And of course, it keeps us looking in the opposite direction of where we ultimately need to look, which is within ourselves, because it's not a finding process, it's an uncovering process. And so let's maybe from that personal standpoint, take us back to maybe the couple of years before your accident, and what was life at that moment? What did it look like for you?
Yeah, life was kind of funny. I actually starts with my mom. I'm from an Italian family. We were sitting at the table one night back in 2011, I believe it was. And she said to me, "Hey, Aunt, you're starting to look a little big there around the waist." And I was probably I was a little bit on the heavy side of things. I was about 275 with a 46-inch waist, and I wasn't holding back on eating. So, moms, especially Italian mothers, I mean, you gotta listen to your moms. And my mom said to me, my father's a diabetic, and he was struggling with some health issues. And she says, "Hey, listen, you're coming to an age that you gotta really pay attention." Anyway, so long story short, I listened to my mom. I joined the gym. I really kind of turned on the afterburners as far as watching what I was eating and my lifestyle, and kind of got really, I lost 100. I wound up losing 100 pounds. During that journey, I actually developed some kidney stones. During that time, went through a whole kidney stone bout. But anyway, they found I had bladder cancer, and they happened to be looking for things in my, and they found the cancer. Anyway, long story short, that really opened my eyes as far as, hey, got to really be conscious. And I even went one step further and got into cycling and really went all out and started to really do like the 100-mile rides and all the kinds of charity rides, and donating my time to cancer research, and just really trying to focus on health and my lifestyle. And that's what actually led me to one of the greatest moments. I did the 5-borough ride in New York City. It was in, I guess it was in it was in May of 2015. And it was really a highlight of my life to do that ride and go through the boroughs, and a lot of pictures
Fun ride.
on the top of the Verrazano Bridge, where we're not supposed to stop, but I stopped anyway because I thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime picture to look out onto the Hudson River and take a picture there. So anyway, that's where kind of I guess it was the apex of my life right there. And believe it or not, I talk about this a little bit in my book, is I foreshadowed what was about to happen. I had dinner the night before with family and friends, and I had a toast to them, and I said, I just want to toast everyone, because you never know what life's in store for you. And you have to enjoy your time with your family and friends and enjoy every moment. Little do I know, 2 weeks later, my life would take a 180, and it would surely change at that point in time.
Yeah. I want to get to that moment in particular. And I guess maybe just before we do, you talk about how to cherish those moments and to be aware of family. How different is that? How much, what does that mean differently to you today than it did then? Because I know that's part of what you've also shared with me, is that you thought you knew what that meant to you, but now it means something very, very different. I was wondering if you could speak to that just before we talk next.
You know what? It's so hard to put in words, Luke. I mean, it literally is, when you talk about family and friends and they say, hey, you call on your family and friends when you need them, and, they're there for you. I never thought I was the traditional, I'm going to say, my daughter always said this about me, the alpha male. And what I mean by that is I didn't need anyone. I could get by. I was a tough guy, right? And you know what? You need somebody. Everybody needs somebody. You ain't going through this life thinking you're going to get by alone. And I found out that it's just more than the words family and friends mean a lot more than those two words. It means love, compassion, empathy, support, just the ability to connect with people in a sense that you just have to be them. You have to be there in the room with them. It's not about saying words. Sometimes it's just about embracing each other and being there and being in the moment with them. And we experienced a lot as a family afterward that really, like I said, no words can really explain what happened. But I can tell you, it was very special to me, and I will never forget my family and friends. And it's just, it's incredible what they mean to me.
Yeah, I think it's what I've found, because I can only share from my own experience. It means something to us in our minds, and it's not to say that we don't feel the importance of family and friends throughout the much of our lives. But it's those moments where we have to be just so completely open and vulnerable, and there's no hiding. It's like, here I am. I got no choice. And to experience and be with each other and be seen in those moments, and to relate in those moments when there are no masks, there's no alpha in the room, right?
Nope.
And we're just there. Nope. And right. And so now all of a sudden it's something that like you said, it's felt much tougher to put into words what that actually is. but it sinks in and it integrates at such a deeper capacity. And I think we'll get to the accident and the process recovery that you went through that kind of opened so much of this up. But that to me is one of the, the hallmarks of your story, and what has come out of it is that feeling of life, that experience of life. And I think that's so much of what so many of us are looking to reconnect to in our lives, right? Because there's nothing like that, to truly be with somebody or with a group of people at that level. It is tough to put words, and it's tough to find that in any other way.
So there are a couple things vulnerability. I really want to touch on vulnerability in a minute, because I think vulnerability is very powerful, probably the most powerful thing that I experienced in my life. When I first came home, obviously I couldn't walk or do a lot of things. We used my hands, and I really relied on my family a lot. And it really opened up. It was stressful here. It was tough. I'm going to tell you. I sat down at the table and I looked at my family and I said, this is either going to make us or break us. We're like a chain right now. We're links right now. So that link is either going to get very strong or it's going to break apart if we don't bind together. And we're going to have to all make sacrifices. And, it started with my wife, making the sacrifice if she didn't have her husband to do things anymore around the house. It started, and her lover, and, the person that she confided in, and do all those things together. It was a sacrifice on my son. He had to be the man, per se, the man of the house, and take over a lot of the things that were going on around now. My daughter sacrificing, she's a teenage girl. She had to sacrifice her summer, her friends, her school, everything. Yeah. So everyone was laying sacrifices down, and it was just amazing, the transformation. And believe me, it was all not roses and buttercups here. I mean, there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of yelling and screaming. Hey, we're an Italian family, and we were letting it all out. But the emotions, emotions are good. There's no good or bad emotions. There are emotions there for reasons. They're there for outlets for us. They're signals, right? If we have to understand and sometimes we have to embrace some of those bad emotions, but they're not bad. They're not bad or good, but they allow us to communicate, sense, to feel who we are, all good stuff. And it was just an amazing a period in time that as far as the transformation of me and the family together.
Absolutely. So let's go to the actual accident and what occurred for you. And then let's talk a little bit about those first couple of weeks right afterwards.
Sure.
So take us through. You go from being at the very top of the Verrazano, and not long after that, you're in a very different spot.
Yeah, very different spot. So top of the Verrazano, I'm, just probably ecstasy is it was just amazing. Yeah. Then 2 weeks later, so it's funny. It was a charity ride locally here in Philadelphia. Son actually signed me up for it and recommended I do it. It was a pretty short ride, 25 miles, not a big deal. I took it as a Sunday morning. I told my wife I'd be back for pasta dinner that afternoon, and never came back. So I'm riding along that day. It's hard to describe because that day, it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful, beautiful May 17th, 2015. We just passed the 3-year anniversary of it. And never forget, I was coming down to the wire about a mile away. I could see the finish line and not long in the distance. And I said, hey, I'm just going to finish strong. Next thing I know, darkness. Woke up in the arms of a stranger, and I couldn't feel my arms or my legs. At that point in time, a lot of paraplegics and quadriplegics that I spent time with speak about this is a time when you're reborn, and they use this as a rebirth. I was reborn at that moment. You're almost like you're helpless at that point. I was laying there on the street, totally talk about vulnerability. I actually, the only thing I started doing, Luke, to be honest with you, is I started praying. Yeah. That's the only thing I knew that I could do at that point. There was no raising my hand. There was no raising my hand. I wasn't getting up. And I just heard a lot of, people clamoring and getting an ambulance, obviously, the first responders and everyone. And it was just a point in time which really stood still. I mean, it was like seconds turned into hours waiting for the ambulance. They took me to Jefferson here in Philadelphia, and I had a emergency spinal fusion on my neck and back, which I C3, 4, 5, 6 are all fused together with titanium. Spent 5 hours in emergency surgery, came out, and then spent a week in ICU. Don't remember too much at all that week. Most people say it's better you don't.
Yeah.
I was pretty banged up, broke my nose, get lacerations in my face. Didn't look too pretty. It looked like I went 12 rounds with Rocky Balboa, basically. I took the header, so that's what really happened. And what happened when I took the header, my spinal cord bent and like a garden hose, and that's where it broke. So at that point in time, my wife made a decision with my family to take me to McGee Rehabilitation Hospital in Center City, Philadelphia, one of the finest facilities. I have to thank my wife and her family and my family for making that decision. It was just an amazing facility. I'll never forget my first memories of that was, so when they took me into the hospital, I had to be lifted out of the wheelchair and put into the bed via it was like a little mini crane to put you down. And I remember my mom in front of me, and she just looking at me, and after, I have children, you have children, but I can't imagine what my mom was feeling at that point in time when she looked at me. Here's her son, 50 years old, and he can't move. So I don't know. Those moments in that time stood still, and to this day, it's emotional. You just, there's a lot of memories. There's just things that happened in that. I was in the actual hospital for a month, and then I was an outpatient at their McGee Riverfront Center, which is their boot camp, and I was there for 6 months afterward. My son and my family, my father-in-law would take me each day there, and it would be a grueling 8 to 4:30 kind of, just learning how to walk and use my function. I had no bowel movement either. Those things had to come back in time too. So everything basically. And the best way I can describe this is, when your computer has a problem and you have to do a system reboot, a manufacturer resetting?
Yeah.
That's what happened to me.
Okay.
A manufacturing resetting totally reset my system to the point of me learning actually how to walk again and use my hands. And it really, at that point in time, talk about vulnerability. I have one great story that I want to share, and it really kind of sums up everything that happened there in the hospital. Yeah. Is the first, I think it was maybe the third night I was there, a nurse came into my room. It was probably a woman in her late 60s. And she came in and she said to me, "It's time for your bath." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I can't give myself a bath." And she says, "Well, I'm going to be giving you a bath tonight." I said, "Oh, okay." Here goes that alpha male in me a little bit, right? And I was, still, right? Still, I got this still in my head, this alpha male in me, this robust, ego, I'm a guy and I don't need anyone's help. But anyway, she rolled me in there, and she put me into a chair, helped me transfer into a chair into the shower, and she began to bathe me and wash me down. And I began to cry. And I looked at her and I said, "This is horrible." I said this. And she looked down at me and she said to me, "Do you think you're the first or the last that I have to do this to?" And she says, "You shouldn't be ashamed." And at that point, that vulnerability that we just talked about, that was all gone then. That was truly the point in my life that I knew that I needed somebody. I needed everybody, actually. I just didn't need her. I needed everybody. And at that point in time, I relinquished control of what I thought I was and who I thought I was. And then I realized I was truly Anthony Degliomini. And here I am. And now I'm going to make that change that I have to make in my life. And whatever was given to me, now I have to live with.
Wow. When you see, I'm curious, I don't know if we spoke about this when we've chatted in the past. From that moment, and you go through that type of an experience, I'm curious how the way in which you viewed and related to your family in the coming weeks after that experience changed.
It took a lot of getting used to, you know, they saw a change in me immediately. I wasn't the same dad.
Yeah.
What I mean by the same dad, my feeling, I truly was being who I was at that point in time. So when I came home, I didn't have functionality of a lot of things. So I was on a self-cath. I had a self-cath at that point in time. For people out there, I didn't have the ability to go to the bathroom. So believe it or not, we had a hurricane, not a hurricane, a tornado come through, knock out our power the first week I was home. And we were in the dark most of the time. And I kind of looked up at the sky and said, God, I know I'm going through a little tough time, but it's not making it too difficult here for me. But anyway, so one night I couldn't hold the flashlight and self-cast. So I had, and the only person who was around was my daughter. And I had to ask my daughter to help me out with me. And I got to give her so much. My daughter, I love her. And she said, sure, Dad.
Wow.
You know, so
yeah,
you know, your children are, you bring them in this world, but you never think that they're going to have to take care of you. And that vulnerability at that moment. But you know what? It was just, I knew my children were also learning so much about me and about themselves now too.
Yeah.
How much they can see how life sometimes is so unexpected and so many things can happen. And I didn't view it as a negative. I viewed it as something that, hey, she's learning something that she'll never, ever forget in her life. And she's experiencing something on such an organic and such a personal level that she walked away with something, Luke, I did.
Yeah. Curious, word that you probably wouldn't have used as much prior to your accident as you would probably use now. I'm curious what the word acceptance means to you at this point.
First of all, I accept all emotions and all feelings for what they are. I don't address them as good or bad, nor do I try to do it with life experience and some of the things that I go through in life now. There's some things you just don't have control over. And when the accident happened, that's really what happened. The aftermath, the rehab, the things, those I had, but the circumstances were completely out of it. So the acceptance to sometimes understand that some things just happen and you can't find a plausible cause for them. And we all want to know the whys and how did it happen? Believe me. And I felt those things. I replayed things in my mind. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done it that day. You know what? They're for naught. It happened. It was done. It was over. I mean, it was like, you got to make a choice. And the awareness in my life right now is you have to accept things for they are. And then you have the choice and the freedom to create what you want to create around that. And I created to take it to make my choice and to change my life. And I made a promise in that hospital. And there's a big promise, and there's a promise to God. And I was laying in that bed one night and I was really alone. I remember texting my wife, and I texted my wife and I said, get me out of here, please. I felt like every 4 hours they would come in and they would flip me over to one side and they flip me over. I felt like a hot dog or a hamburger every night. And the big guy would come in and he'd say, hey, how you doing? We're going to flip you tonight. And I was like, oh, this is, so I'm like, God, just get me out of here. And my wife texted me back and she said, "I'm sorry, Anthony, but you got it. We can't.
Where you need to be.
You can't come home yet."
Yeah.
And that was acceptance. At that point in time, I had to accept where I was. And there was only two choices. Either I could lay there and feel sorry for myself and just, have that self, just engulf myself in that. Or I could say to myself, you know what? I got to find a way to get out of here, or at least find a way that I could survive and live with myself and my family. I need to get back to them. I need to find a way to do that.
Yeah. So you chose to use this experience and you decided to write a book called Believe.
Mm-hmm.
Why that word believe?
There's a couple big reasons, okay? But there are many reasons. I mean, one, so as I was raising my family, I was raised as a Catholic, and a lot of beautiful memories, but I strayed away from my faith. Mm-hmm. During the time I was at the hospital, my father-in-law, who's a Eucharistic minister, he would bring me in communion every day. I actually received communion when I was in the hospital every day. And believe me, I wasn't a churchgoer. I was one of those Christmas and Easter kind of guys. And as I was recovering and receiving the Eucharist and receiving and being prayerful and just mindful of my spirituality, I became closer to God again. And I really believe that strengthened and gave me, I don't know, strength doesn't even touch it. It was just this belief that I can someday get beyond where I was.
Right.
This is such a bad place to be in. Not what I'm saying in the physical, but in a sense, my mind and spiritually, I was just healing. And believe it or not, you heal physically quicker than you heal emotionally.
Sure.
At least I did through the tragedy, because when I did bounce back and I started to walk again, I had the whole post-traumatic stress disorder and the anxiety and the panic attacks. That all hit me on the back end. And that was equally just as tough, probably even tougher than the physicality of the rehab. So right. Emotionally, spiritually. So I start to heal, and the belief that I could get better and that I believed in God really was I think the cornerstone in helping me recover and get back. Mm-hmm. The other thing about believing is, if you don't believe in yourself, if you do not believe in yourself, there's no way. How can you accomplish any objective, any goal, any milestone, anything that you want to do or accomplish in your life? You really need to believe in yourself ultimately. It won't go any further unless you really, if you say to yourself, I think I can do it, that's not believing in yourself. It's that belief that is the spark that gets you going. So that's why believing. And the other thing was, when I was laying in that bed and I made the biggest promise, is that I would give back every day of my life. And it culminated the other night on May 3rd, when McGee presented me with the Believe Award for 2019. And this award is given to an ex-patient that gives back to the hospital. And that night, when I gave my speech and I was talking to all the paraplegics and quads and the past and the present and the future patients of McGee, I was talking to them because I was fulfilling my promise that I would give back every day of my life. And and believe me, it's not over. This is actually part of that giving back, is telling the story and helping people understand that they're not alone. They're never alone. There's always someone out there that can help them. Absolutely.
I want to come back to the not alone part in a moment. Something you said in, that believing in yourself. Mm-hmm. And, let me share this a little bit from my perspective, because Tony, I'm curious of how this worked for you. Obviously believing in yourself, it's one of those things that a whole lot easier said than done at any moment in our lives, it seems like. And what I found is that the more that my journey took me into understanding myself, mm-hmm. and accepting myself and having compassion for myself and getting to, growing in terms of even self-love and things along those lines. All of those things that connect us more deeply to who we really truly are, peeling away all the assumptions and the doubts and the experiences that have pulled us away from that kind of inner nature, that true nature, the things we believed we were supposed to be, but actually weren't truly who we were. When we peel those back and get to know ourselves at that deep, deep level, that belief in self isn't something you need to try to have anymore, because there's a comfort or there's a resonance, a connection, an acceptance of self. And you're not trying to be anything that you're already not. You're just being. And therefore the belief it's just inherent because you're just being. It's not even about believing yourself. It's just now being from that place.
You're being. And I couldn't have said it better myself. It's really understanding that you're no longer pretending.
Yes.
And I think it's back to your first question when you're talking about, going through life and you got all these people telling you who and what you should be. And sometimes you start pretending and you get caught up in who you're pretending to be. And I think what the accident allowed me to do is exactly what you said. It peeled away, like an onion, all those layers, right? And actually got down to the self. And not even the ego, because I think the ego tries to protect the self.
Yeah.
And the self is existing all the time, but all that pretending and all those assumptions and limiting beliefs and all those things circling around, right, manifesting themselves, were destroyed. They were actually destroyed during the accident. And I was able to come out of the accident with this awakening, this presence, and actually now the freedom to choose and to live to who I am today. And believe me, I think it's liberating. It's actually, I feel like a child some days, and I say, wow, I don't have to pretend. I don't have to go to work and say, this is, I just don't have that anymore. I walk into work, I smile at people, I hug them, and it really is liberating. That's the only word I could think of right now.
Yeah. I mean, that reference to pretending, I think is a real key one, because we may not view it as pretending at any different point in our lives, but we do. We put on, it's a topic that comes up on this show all the time, is we put on masks because we're playing into a role that we believe we're supposed to be playing. And it becomes very natural, and we see other people doing it. And so it just becomes kind of the norm. And then when we have those moments where we're just leveled flat, that all of a sudden the ego can't cling to those things anymore. And those things become pretty irrelevant to us and insignificant to us. And we're just there. And here we are.
And you know what I notice now? And it's really interesting. I notice people are attracted to me, and not in a physical sense,
right,
but in an emotional feeling sense, where they sense that here's this guy maybe that, yeah, man, he's just walking around and living it. Yeah. But that freedom, I think they sense it, and they feel it too, to a degree. Yeah. And they come towards me and they look me or seek me out, and they don't say, hey, how do I get like you? It's more like saying to me, wow, you found your true, who you are, your true self. And they're gravitating toward it now, almost feeling that sense of, hey, I love that. I love that you feel that. And they want to feel the same thing. Yes. And when I sit down with people and I coach or I mentor them, or I just have this conversation, I'll strike up a conversation at a restaurant or whatever. But it's interesting to see how people feel the same thing. They want the same thing, and they're gravitating towards that same feeling. And it's just very powerful. Very powerful when you have that connection with people. It really is.
And I think this is how I also wanted to come back to the idea of not alone. I mean, it's the very fact that when we can share these experiences, we can talk about what it is that we've been through, and not just talk about the triumphs and what we've overcome in this really wonderful, positive frame of things, but it's the trials, the tribulations, the days of despair, the days that we were struggling, the days we were born flat, the days where we had to ask family members things that we would never in a million years have thought to ask them previously.
Absolutely.
And when we go through that and we talk through that, that's when all of a sudden we can discover that we're not alone. And I think to me, it's one of the very important aspects of you sharing your story, other people that come onto the show that share their story, is it does let us know that we're not alone. And that for each of us, yes, we can believe, and we can, believe in ourselves, but just because we can do it alone, we don't have to. And it's a whole lot easier if we don't. Whole lot easier if we do that.
It's a whole lot easier if we don't. And I think, especially with some of the societies, the way we approach things, that we don't need others, and the autonomy of the world. And now we have the internet and, distractions, everything going on, but the connectivity, the ability to connect to someone on a very low level, and not have all this up top, but getting down to just, hey, we're all the same. We all have a limited amount period of time here, and let's really understand who we are, love each other, support each other, and we can create so much happiness in the world, and it could be that much better. Unfortunately, it took a little accident for me to understand some of that, but I believe, there you go, that it was always in me, and now it has the ability to flow now with it was like, I guess I almost see it like that pipe, and it was like trickling out before, that ability, and now it's completely opened up. The hose is open, and I'm just flourishing in this ability to show this love and support with people, and the empathy, and to connect with them on levels that I never have experienced in my life. It's amazing. It really is. And getting the coaching, we didn't talk about it. I love to talk about that a little bit. When I came out, I guess it was the accident. Yeah. Accident happened 15. I think I started IPAC and my coaching, my journey with coaching in 17, I think it was. And that was amazing, because here I am, right? I just had this big life-changing event, and I'm sitting in this room, and I'm going, wow, I'm here in a group of strangers. But it was amazing, because even though we came from all walks of life and we had all different journeys, we were all there kind of for the same reason. We're trying to find ourselves. And the whole IPAC, and learning how to connect, and just learning about yourself, but finding out that we're all kind of on the same journey, was that in itself was kind of amazing, to be in that room, in those classes, and formulating all these relationships. And now I have all these people all around that I never dreamed about meeting or having these connections with. And that was a transformation too. It really was a part of this journey. I mean, it was amazing.
Outstanding.
And I have, Bruce and you have done it. It's just been an amazing journey. It really has. And here I am, right? Being I never would have thought that. If you would have told me, listen, in 2015, and this is how I kind of think sometimes. All right, I'm laying in a bed and I can't walk, or that in 2019, May, be walking around, wrote a book, be acknowledged by the hospital that took care of me, be interviewed by someone who created a coaching community, and now have this. Who would have, not in my wildest dreams. Not in my wildest dreams. I would have just laughed in your face and said, you're kidding me. But that's what life's all about, right?
Yeah. Tony, I know that you wrote the book not just for those that were going through the type of, physical tragedy that you went through, but for those that are going through any type of significant life change, life transformation. And if there is somebody that's listening to this show right now, and they're in the middle of it still, they're still in the challenges of that journey, and they have not yet seen what could be on the other side for them. If you had just a couple of minutes with them, what would you like to share with them today?
First of all, I wouldn't say anything for a couple of minutes. I would just listen to them. I would be there in the moment with them. Sometimes there's no words you can say to someone when they're going through a struggle. There's nothing you could say or do. There's nothing you could feel. You just allow them to feel what they're feeling at that moment and be there with them in the moment. And just acknowledge what they're feeling and seeing. Everyone's got to heal on their own terms. And there's no time schedule. There's no calendars. There's no outlook. And you just got to show them love. And know that they are being loved. There's someone out there that loves them. And I'll leave it with this one little story. I guess it was maybe the first week, and we'd all meet in the little cafeteria. And typically we'd have to get there on our own, or one of the nurses have to bring us there, and we'd all meet. And first couple of times there, I couldn't open up the juices, or I couldn't feed myself. So I was very stubborn once again. And I wouldn't ask anyone, none of the nurses. So one of the paraplegics afterward noticed that I was being kind of stubborn and approached me. He said, "Tony, do you have a minute?" I said, "Sure." He says, "I noticed you didn't eat. You're not a little down." You know? I said, "Yeah." I said, "This place really blank. I don't like my life right now." I said. He says, "Oh, okay." He says, "Can I ask you a couple questions?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Where am I going to go?" He says, "You have a wife?" I said, "Yeah, I got a wife. I'm only been married." I said, "Oh, 25 years. Do you have children?" I said, "Yeah, actually, I do have 2 children." Said, "Oh, how old?" I said, 20 and 17. Oh. He says, "How about your mom and dad? Are they still alive?" I said, "Yeah, they are." "How about your friends?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah, I got a lot of friends." He says, "You know what? Seems to me that you have a lot to live for. Maybe you should just stop feeling sorry for yourself."
Wow. Tony, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for sharing your journey, your story, your vulnerability with us, and for the fact that you're not only just writing and sharing the book Believe, but the very fact that you're out there and you're talking about this stuff, and you're talking about your journey, and you're talking about what you've been through, I know is of help, of inspiration, but also of understanding to so many that are out there. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with the One Idea Way audience.
Thank you so much, Luke. And for everyone out there, believe like me.
So for everybody, I want to encourage you to check out Tony's book, Believe. You can find that on Amazon. You can go to believelikeme.com and check out Tony and some of the work that he's up to. And I think out of all the things that I could come back to and share with you and kind of wrap up on today, I think the one that I really just want to share with you is this idea that whenever we're going through something, whatever the struggle is, whatever the challenge, whether we're the one going through it or whether we've got somebody close to us that's going through it, I think the key word that I heard in so much of this was simply listen. If you're the person who's witnessing this, listen to what it is that they're going through. Listen to what it is that they might be struggling with, or whatever emotions are present, or whatever it is that they need to share and express and just simply get out of themselves at that moment. If you're the one who's going through it, listen to that voice as well. Meaning listen to the voice that's deep within you that just wants to express itself, that just wants to let it out. Be willing to be heard and be seen by another human being, because there's so much that transfers, there's so much connection that gets built through that process. And there's so much that we learn in terms of the fact that we're not alone when we do. When we're able to do that, we start to reconnect to the strength that exists within all of us. we start to reconnect to who we really truly are beneath all the things that we've gone through. And we get to really truly move from that place of even believing in ourselves to just simply being ourselves. But I truly actually believe that so much of that journey begins with simply listening. I want to thank you as always for tuning into One Idea Away. Continue to enjoy the journey. Check out IPEC's coach training program at ipeccoaching.com/OIA. And of course, to find out about all the conversations, events, gatherings, all the things that we've got upcoming, then head on over to oneideaaway.com/community. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please do us the favor of subscribing, reviewing the show, as well as sharing insights or comments that stood out for you in this episode.